Okay, so this week we are still, as we are going to be for the entire year, coming from She Speaks, which is wisdom from the women of the Bible to the modern Black woman. This week we are in week 17, and we are talking about Jael. So Jael, it's Jael. It may be Jael, Jael. I'm gonna say Jael. She can be found in the book of Judges, and she is in chapter 4, verses 9 through 12. She's also in Judges chapter 5, verse 6, and then also in verses 23 through 27. So in Judges, we talked about, it wasn't last week, but the person who is right before her is Deborah. So we talked about Deborah a couple of weeks ago with Dr. Brianna, where she gave us a lesson on Deborah. But in talking about that, it gave the scenario of, or not the scenario, but the topic of Deborah being the judge and being a prophetess of the time, and her leading and guiding Barak, who was the leader, in telling him that they were going to go into war. He was afraid to go into war, and he told Deborah that I need for you to come with me. So she agreed to go with him. But one of the things that she prophesied to him when he was going to do that was that because he was not immediately and did not have swift obedience to do what God had called him to do, and he lacked in faith, that a woman was going to kill his enemy. It didn't say that his enemy was going to, take over him and all these things, but she did say your enemy will die at the hand of a woman. And so with that, they didn't know who the woman was. They didn't know how it was going to happen. They didn't know what was going to happen. She just spoke what the Lord had told her. So they go out to war, and Sisera is the person who is leading the tribe of Jaban or Jaban. And at this time, he knows that Barak is coming for him. He doesn't know the extent of how or what happens, but what he does is he goes, and as he's hiding, he goes into, he sees the tent where Jael's, the women are, which is separate from the men. They were supposed to be a safe space because they didn't have any beef. They wasn't at odds. They wasn't against each other, but she knew who he was and what he was doing and what he had done to the Israelites, which is where Deborah and Barak are from. And so she tells him it's okay for him to come in. He basically tells her that if anyone comes and asks you if anyone is here, say no. Basically tell them I'm not here. He asked her for a cup of water. Instead of a cup of water, she gives him a cup of milk. And then when he lays down and he is fast and resting and peacefully asleep, she takes a peg from the tent and drives it with the hammer into the temple of his head and kills him immediately on the spot. Dead on arrival, DOA, he gone. Okay. So there are a couple of things that can come from this. Then after that, she kills him. She goes out, she sees Barak, and she says, you're looking for Sisera and he's dead. I'm going to bring you to him so you can see. So he comes, he sees that he is definitely dead on arrival. She has done the duty, and his enemy has now been killed, as Deborah has said, at the hand of a woman. So what are some things that I want us to be able to take from this? I want to go back also because in doing my studying on this, I was like, well, why did she give him milk and he asked for water? And there was one study that I was reading, and it said that she probably gave him milk. I don't know if y'all were like me, but when I was a little girl, every night my mom would give me a warm cup of milk and a Pop-Tart. That is how I went to sleep. That is how I was going to bed. That's probably a reason why I need sweets to go to sleep now. But she would give me a warm Pop-Tart and a warm cup of milk, and that was supposed to help me sleep through the night. I don't know if it worked or not. However, they are saying that she gave him milk because milk was going to keep him full. Just like a baby, you put cereal in their milk at night, or you do something to kind of thicken it up so that your stomach is full and you're supposed to rest better. So they're saying that she gave him milk because it was going to help. She knew that it was going to help him sleep, which was going to allow her to better be able to make sure he was out cold when she was going to kill him. So that was one of the reasons. I don't know. There's nothing biblically that says that, but just when I was reading some of the teachings on her, that was one of the things that I saw. So I'm going to mute you real quick, Val. What are some things that we can take away from this story? There are quite a few. But the ones that I want to point out is to never underestimate yourself or anybody else. Why do I say never underestimate yourself or anybody else? Because in this particular situation, he thought he was going to a safe space because he was surrounded by women. He thought this is a safe space. These women can't harm me. I'm a man. What they gonna do to me? I'm at war. They can't hurt me. Not to even realize that what he was stepping into was a deeper war zone than what he was in when he was outside. He would have been better off sleeping under a tree than sleeping in her tent. And so I never want us to underestimate the people that are around us, because everybody who you think is there to do good for you may not always be. Every place that you think is a safe space may not be. That is always why it is so important that we are praying and asking God for wisdom and discernment in all of our interactions. We always want to make sure that God is in the midst of it, because I'm pretty sure he did not have a relationship with God, but had he had a relationship with God and he said, before I go in here and lay my head down and go to sleep, is this a safe space? Wisdom and discernment would have told him that it was not. So that is one hand of it. The other hand of it is do not be underestimated, because he underestimated the power of her and the women in that tent, because he went there thinking that he was going to be able to be asleep and wake up in the morning and go back outside and go to killing. That is not what happened. So do not underestimate yourself, because you have more power than what you might actually be giving yourself. And what I want to say in that is act on the opportunities that God has given you. God gave her the opportunity to end the war. God opened up gave her position and authority that nobody else thought that she would have been given, to be able to do something that they thought only a man would be able to do. Now, Barak, I think, probably didn't have this mindset because he trusted Deborah and he had enough faith in Deborah to ask Deborah to come with him. So the fact that he needed a woman to get him through war, and that a woman is the one who ended the war, was very ironic to me, in the sense of this man who was supposed to be the head needed women to follow through with him and to do the job for him. So do not underestimate yourself, and do not take for granted the opportunities in which God has given you. Because I do believe that if Barak would have went through and had swift obedience to do what God told him to do the first time, he might have been able to defeat Sisera on his own. He might not have needed Deborah. If he would have just said, when Deborah told him to go and he went, he might have been able to get the victory. But because he didn't, a woman whom was least likely to kill this man was the one who was considered the hero in the story. She was the one who was the victor. She was the one who was able to end it, not him. And then lastly, I want us to always use the tools that we are given. She didn't go around trying to sharpen knives. She didn't go around trying to find something else. She simply knew, we got this, we're in a tent. The tent is being held down by a peg, and I got a hammer because that's what we use to pitch this bad boy up. I'm going to use what I have. I'm going to use the tools that I've already been given to be able to execute. I'm going to use the tools that I have to be able to move forward. I'm going to use the tools that I have to be able to defeat the enemy that has come into my camp. So sometimes we look for outside things to help us. We look for things that we don't need. We say, okay, I'm going to be able to do this when I get this, or I'm going to be able to succeed in this when this happens, or I'm going to be able to be fruitful and multiply when this happens. When sometimes all you need is all you need. I mean, all you have is all you need. And we see that also when David goes to kill Goliath. All he had was a slingshot and some rocks. He didn't have the full armor that everybody else had. He didn't have all of the other artillery. All he had was a slingshot and rocks. That's it, to kill Goliath, the one that everybody else was afraid. This young boy was able to do it with what he had. So I don't want us to always think that we need something else, or I don't always want us to feel as if we need to have more, because what we have is enough. God can use what we have to be able to do what we need to do. Just like he took the 2 fish and the 5 loaves, or was it 5 fish and 2 loaves? You know the fish and the loaves story. Just like he took that and was able to use that to feed 5,000 plus people, because it says 5,000 men, not including the women and children. If he was able to use that to feed those people, what makes us think that he cannot do something with what we have? So especially when it comes to our finances, I know we say, I don't have enough, or I can't afford this, or I can't do this. It is important for us to realize that if God has blessed you with it, he will bless it. That is why it is important for us to take all that we have and honor God with it and give it back to him. Because when we give it back to him, he is going to multiply it. God is a multiplier. God will take what you have and be able to multiply it. He's not going, he may add to it, but it's always going to be more. God is not a God of subtraction. He doesn't want to deplete us. He wants to increase us. And so because of that, we have to make sure that we are giving it back to him and we are honoring him with it so that he can increase it. Just like he gave what she used to be able to pitch up her tent, he also gave her the same tools to be able to defeat the man who was going to kill thousands, who had an army full of people. One woman, one peg, one hammer. That's it. It did not take a whole bunch. It didn't take no chariots. It didn't take all of this other stuff. It just took him to go to sleep and for her to be able to execute. That's it. So I want us to leave away with those things. Remember that God is a multiplier. He is going to multiply the things that we have. I want us to always seize the opportunities that God has given us, and also to always remember that we need to have discernment, because sometimes the people who we think are there to do good are not. And then sometimes we have to understand that everybody that comes into our space looking as a safe haven don't even need to be there. So let's take that and we will have our group discussion.